Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 366 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Eilon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our third book is called From Letters to Leaders, Leveraging Your Fraternity or Sorority Experience to Land Your Dream Job. So go and pick up that book today on Amazon. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring fraternity and sorority leaders together. Fun fact, so many of our speakers over the last few years are all members of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. So today I want a little change of pace, okay? I need a different perspective. And today we have a member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. So I am super excited to bring him onto the show today. Now, let me tell you a little bit about him. Fletcher Cleaves is a native of Memphis, Tennessee, who decided to turn his tragedy into a testimony. As an advocate and motivational presenter, he speaks out against the dangers of texting and driving, as well as overcoming adversity. He aspires to share his journey in the hopes that it will save lives and inspire others to reach their goals, regardless of the challenges that they may face. Welcome to the show, Fletcher.
What's going on? What's happening?
It.
What's happening? I had to start off with a little bark there. But what's going on? Glad to be here.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited to have you on the show. I've been looking forward to this for the last 2 weeks. I have to tell you, man, it's finally here.
Finally here. Let's get it going. I'm excited as well.
Oh my God, it's so great talking to you. I love it. All right, so let's get into it because our audience needs to understand your background in order to understand why you do what you do today. And so let's go back to college. You decided on Lambuth University for your undergraduate experience. You got a football scholarship. And of course, that university is in Jackson, Tennessee. So what made you decide on Lambuth of all places?
Well, it comes down to it. It came down to money. I got the best bang for my buck. They gave me the best scholarship opportunity, the most money. But not only that was a deciding factor. Coach Hugh Freeze, who was the head coach at the time, really spoke to me. I love their offense with me being a receiver. Spread offense, we're throwing it, 500 yards, 600 yards a game. I was like, sign me up. And he was just a great coach. He came down, spoke to me, spoke to my parents. We really connected. And I was like, this is the guy I want to play for my upcoming 4 years.
Man, I love that. See, I mean, people don't understand how important that is to make sure that you and your skills fit into the philosophy of the team and the coach. And you clearly had a match. This guy was going to run and gun, and you knew you were going to be catching some passes.
Exactly. I went with I call him my brother, who was a running back on my high school team. And we went to a couple colleges together, and we went to that college. And he was like, spread offense. If we're running the ball, I'm not happy. And my friend Rashard was like, well, I can leave.
That was music to your ears. You heard that? You said, let's go.
Yeah, I was like, hey, let's stay a little bit longer. He was like, my friend was like, nah, it's time to go, dude.
That's a great story. I love that. All right. So now let's fast forward a little bit. September 10th, 2009. Your whole life completely changed on that day. Tell our audience what happened to you that day.
Yeah, September 10th, 2009 was one of the darkest days of my life thus far. So I was just getting out of practice, same routine I've done 100 times. It was the first NFL game of the season, a Hall of Fame game, the the Tennessee Titans versus Pittsburgh Steelers. And me and my roommate, Dane Mullins, head to Buffalo Wild Wings to check out the game. It's super packed in there, so we decided to get the food to go and come back to the dorm. And on the way back to the dorm, unfortunately, there was a distracted driver not paying attention, wrong side of the road, in some type of device, cell phone, iPad, messing with the radio, something that they weren't focused on driving. So they were coming straight towards me. I was driving, and I overcorrected, I panicked, and just overcorrected, tried to miss that car, spun out of control, hit a guardrail, and once we hit that guardrail, we flipped into a ditch where I broke my neck in 2 places. I was paralyzed immediately and knocked unconscious, but here I am today. So that day, I went from a star athlete, a collegiate athlete, freshman athlete, all that fun stuff, to now being a quadriplegic within a blink of an eye.
Oh my God. It's just that story just gives me the chills just thinking about that day and just how traumatic that must have been for you. Now,
Mhm.
I have a deep question for you, and this deep question is, did you
Mhm.
forgive the person who was driving the car at you that day?
I did forgive them, not necessarily immediately, probably like within the first 2 days though, because my first thought was with football being, when you're 18 years young, what's important to you at the time? It was football, school, girls. Like that was my three priorities at that time. And having one of those things taken away from me, I can no longer play football. I was like, what am I gonna do now? I was not necessarily focused on being angry. I was focused on what is my next step. And then I kind of sat down and thought about everything that was going on. And you can't cry over spoiled milk. I've always been a kind of a resilient young man where I need to know, all right, this is what's wrong. This is what's happening. What do I need to do to get to the next step? And kind of that next man up mentality that they teach you in football. Like, all right, the starting receiver's hurt. Who's next man up? Next man up. So football definitely taught me a lot of things and that I could transpire and transgress into my full term life. And I use that mentality to like, all right, you're paralyzed, you can't play football, but what can you do, Fletch? Like, what are your next steps to get to where you want to be?
Hmm. I'm
So to
sure
answer
that
your
was a
question,
long
no,
road.
no.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that was a long road to like relearn how to do everything, basically because you are paralyzed. And so
Mm-hmm.
you eventually end up re-enrolling at the University of Memphis. So what is
Mm-hmm.
it like going back to college now? But this time you're going back as a quadriplegic.
Yeah, so I missed my first entire year, my freshman year with doing therapy in Atlanta, Georgia. So I
Mhm.
do a year in therapy in Atlanta, Georgia, as you mentioned, relearning how to do these minimal activities, putting my shirt on, navigating in the wheelchair, brushing my teeth. I'm like, it was frustrating days I cried, days I was angry because I was, like I said, I'm sitting watching social media, watching all my freshman friends enjoying spring break and on the yard and doing all these fun things. And I'm like, all right, dude, I got to figure out a way to get back to that environment. So I come back to University of Memphis. I re-enrolled in college, and being in my hometown, but not being a quadriplegic, a lot of people didn't necessarily know at the moment. So they see me, and I was like, Fletch, why are you in a wheelchair? What happened? I was like, yeah, I was in a car accident last year, dude. And, I tried to explain that. Or for the people that did know, they were like, hey, Fletch, do you need anything? Just extremely helpful. And it was just hard mentally more so than physically at first because I'm like, this is my first time back in the community in a wheelchair. I'm having to navigate through curb cuts and two steep ramps and going over thresholds and all the type of I'm worried about a girl staring at me or people, like all the things, but it was one of the best things I could have ever did because I got an opportunity to join one of the greatest or the greatest fraternity on earth. So it was definitely a plus on my side, and I saw it through, and I graduated with a degree in computer science.
That's incredible. Yeah, don't say one of the best fraternity.
Yeah, the best. There you go, the
Easy.
best.
All right, so you did join Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, the best fraternity. What made you want to join that particular group? Because I'm sure you could have joined other organizations on campus.
Absolutely, yeah. I had the opportunity to join other organizations, but what spoke to me the most about Omega Psi Phi was the four cardinal principles: manhood, scholarship, perseverance, and uplift. And I think those four cardinal principles resonated with me the most. With being a football player and understanding the definition of manhood, understanding the definition of scholarship, with me being a collegiate athlete, and perseverance, as you can see, with me being a quadriplegic now, I had to persevere through many trials and tribulations throughout my life. And then lastly, but not necessarily the least, is uplift. So uplift was one of the things that I continuously wanted to do, and why I became a motivational speaker is to uplift my community and use the mentality of lift as you climb, where as more you rise up, the more you climb. It's about lifting people with you. So that's why I chose to become a motivational speaker and inspire others
Yeah,
and
I
bring
could see.
awareness to distracted driving.
Yeah, I could see how that fraternity and their principles would really resonate with you. It makes a lot of sense. Of course, they have a lot of very famous athletic alumni in Michael Jordan and
Mhm.
Shaquille O'Neal and on
There
and
you
on
go.
and on.
On and on and on. Very a lot of people in entertainment. Steve Harvey, you got so many. You can go down the list for on and on and on.
Yeah, that's just incredible. What a great organization. Now, yeah, I mean, you talk about making the right choices. I know that that's something that you talk about quite often. And,
Hmm.
fraternity and sorority members are often in the news. Unfortunately, the media likes to talk about some of the negative stuff. and they're
Mm-hmm.
often in the news for making the wrong choices. So,
Mm-hmm.
what advice do you have for fraternity and sorority members who are listening right now about making good choices in their life?
Definitely for those group of people, males and females, understand that you are considered upper echelon of your university. You have been chosen to be in this organization, so the campus is going to look up to you. Students are going to watch your every move, and then also being immersed in your fraternities, cardinal principles, or you know rules, so to speak. So understand that people are always watching you. People are always having their eyes on you. When you put those letters on, you're held accountable for all of your actions. So to all of my people in fraternity that might not, in sororities that might not be in the news for the most positive aspect, understand that making the right choice is definitely a big part of being in an organization. Now, understand that you're not going to always make the correct choice, but you can always make smart choices. Like you can make weigh the pros and cons and weigh what needs to be done, but try not to embarrass not only your organization, but more importantly, yourself, so to speak. So we have this saying in Omega Psi Phi that members versus men, which is 80 versus 80. I'd rather have 8 men thoroughly immersed in the true Omega spirit than 80 with lukewarm enthusiasm. And what that means is like you were chosen to be a part of this organization. So we just need 8 people that exemplify our 4 cardinal principles and 80 with lukewarm enthusiasm. So for me to think that I was one of the few to chosen to be in this organization, I cannot do anything to embarrass these letters. So I try to hold myself accountable and hold myself in the right light in everything I do.
Oh, I love that mindset, man. That's just beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely beautifully said. And obviously, education is clearly important to you. I mean, you went back to school and you got your undergraduate degree. It
Mm-hmm.
really didn't matter. I mean, you were going to go out and do that and you were going to accomplish it no matter what obstacles people put in front of you. So,
Mm-hmm.
why do you believe that knowledge is power?
Well, no, I believe knowledge is power because knowledge is one of the one things they can't take away from you. You go back and think to the unfortunately, like the slavery days. One of my grandmothers and my great grandmother used to tell me that they can strip you of your dignity, they can, physically harm you, all these things, but they can't take what's inside your mind. So knowledge is power in that form of aspect. And there's even my personal situation where my physical capabilities changed, but I still had my mind. And that's one of the things in therapy and my parents is instilled inside of me is that like, all right, Fletch, you might not be playing football anymore. You might not can't walk. You might not can't do all these physical things that you're used to doing. But understand that you still have your mind and you still are you. Like you still have your personality, you still have your mind, you still have all the things that make you you, not just the physical capabilities. So when it comes to knowledge, understand that any information you can soak up, soak it up. Understand that you are what makes you unique, and the things inside your mind is what makes you unique. So use that to your advantage. Playing collegiate sports, we all know that your sport won't last forever. So what are you going to do when that sport is over? So I chose to, even though my sport was over at such a young age, at 18 years young, of course, I thought when I graduated high school, I was going to be playing football, 4 years in college, maybe a year in the NFL or maybe 4 in CFL or so. I still got at least 10 years of playing, right?
Right.
And who knows, less than 8 months later, boom, football over. So luckily enough, education was an important aspect of my life. So I chose to go back and get my education and live a prosperous life full of knowledge and power.
Man, you have such a positive mindset. I tell you what, man. I mean, people out there who are in college, and they're feeling, whatever, overwhelmed with some obstacles that are
Mhm.
in front of them, and then they hear your story. Like, I listen to you and I want to run through a brick wall. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, it inspires me, your story. And you travel all over the world, and you're quite the daredevil too. I've seen videos of you doing some amazing things that I've never done. So
Mhm.
talk to our audience. What was your favorite adventure that you've been on since?
Man, I've been on so many. My favorite, I would say, probably the most exhilarating was I went skydiving last September, I want to say, but not too long ago, August, September, something like that. But that was a blissful experience, man. It was so like I don't know when you're just climbing up in the plane and you're like getting the opportunity. You have every opportunity to turn around, but you something inside you that tells you to keep going and keep striving. Our football coach used to say this saying that the person who says they can and the person who says they can't are both right. Which one will you be? So I chose to not be defined by the things I can't do versus the things I can do. So I wanted to just continuously do all of these things that people in wheelchairs don't normally do, or do all of these things that I've always wanted to do, or do all these things where people said I couldn't do, just to prove people wrong. So I went skydiving, and that was probably one of my favorite things I did, just hanging off the side of that plane and, and just looking down like, this is really about to happen. It's like, here we go. And I did it. I accomplished one of my goals, one of my bucket list opportunities. And I'm so glad I did. It's one of those things where you're kind of hyped up to go, and you have every opportunity to psych yourself out. But then once you finish it, you're like, I'm glad I did that.
Wow, man, I'm jealous. I've never been skydiving. I've been bungee jumping a couple of times and I really enjoyed it, but never jumped out of a plane. Not yet. Not yet. So
There you
one
go.
day.
You still got time. You still got time.
So, obviously you've been through a lot and you've seen a lot too. You've been to a lot of
Mhm.
places that, other people might not have been yet. What did this whole ordeal teach you about overcoming adversity in life and just living a prosperous life?
Mhm. This whole ordeal, from not just my physical um, triumphs I've been through with becoming paralyzed, but also the mental trials with just average college, studying for the exam and failing a class and having to overcome that adversity, and having graduation push, all those physical things that are part of life, or all those mental toughness things that are part of life that everybody goes through. And having that compiled on what I was dealing with personally of the physical capabilities, it made me realize that, crappy stuff happens to everybody. Like, it's part of life. Ups and downs, twists and turns are just part of life. But it's not what happens to you that defines you, it's how you respond to it. So how are you going to respond when you fail that English class? How are you going to respond when you become paralyzed at 18 years young? How are you going to respond when you don't get that promotion, when you get the divorce, whatever your trials and tribulations may be? How are you going to respond? And I chose to respond in a positive manner and not respond negatively, and just continue to use my light to show people that it's not what happens to you. I was dealt a crappy hand, so to speak. I was dealt, but it's not about the hand you dealt, it's how you play your cards. And I'm trying to get the royal flush, baby. I'm trying to do what I need to do to live a great life.
Yeah. I talk to athletes on college campuses all the time, and I think many of them were just like you, thinking that they would play in, professional sports, the NFL,
Mhm.
whatever. So what's your advice to the college athletes that are listening right now, the ones that might be hoping that they're going to get a chance in professional sports when they graduate? What would you tell them?
I would tell them, all just have a backup plan. Use your education to take you further than what your physical capabilities can. If you look at the top 10 richest people in the world are not athletes. So if making money is your reason for trying to be in professional sports, if that's truly your goal, then do something else, because, like I said, the top 10 wealthiest people in the world are not athletes. And then secondly, even if you are blessed enough to play professionally, so the subset gets smaller and smaller. In high school, you got your people who are playing just to get exercise, but in college, for the most part, everybody was good on their high school team. And then in the NFL, I'm gonna use the NFL. In the NFL, everybody was good on their college team. And those who make it in the NFL, the 1% of the 1%, how many of those make enough money to survive for a lifetime? Like, not everybody's getting $8 million contracts, $2 million contracts. You got, some 300,000, some 400,000, which is great money, but it's not enough to last you for the next 50 years, because in the NFL, after year three, after year four, you're considered a veteran. So you come in at 22, by the time you're 26, 27, you're you're a veteran, right? Now think about how much life you have to live at the age of 20. Like, you got your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and if you're blessed enough, you're 80s. So, like, you're gonna have to find something to do. So you're gonna have to use what you know up here to continuously further your lifespan, or your life goals and your accomplishments you want to do. Because Father Time is undefeated. Father Time ain't lost yet. So what are you gonna do for those that aren't blessed enough to make it to the NFL? What are you going to do after collegiate sports? For those that are blessed enough to make it NFL, what are you going to do when you don't make the amount of money you thought you were going to make? And then even those that are making the 2, 3, 5, $6 million, if you don't have the financial knowledge to make that money last, you can end up on ESPN broke. The 30 for 30 broke. That was one of the greatest documentaries I've ever seen. You can be one of these guys. You can be the MC Hammer of the world. You can be the whomever of the world. that just kind of blew through so many millions because they didn't have the financial literacy, or they didn't have the knowledge or the opportunities or the will to learn.
Man,
So it's
you make
always,
some
no
good
matter what you
points.
do, how much money you make, you're gonna have to keep learning.
Yeah. You make some great points. And I mean, your story, I think, is, really a testimony to, athletes that, you really do need to have a backup plan because you just never know. You never know.
You
It
never
could be
know.
your next snap on the football field, right? I
You
mean,
never
players
know.
have gotten injured and had career ending injuries. I mean, it happens, you
I
know?
mean, Damar Hamlin,
Yeah.
glad he's doing what he's doing. He's recovering, and I heard he's back to playing football. But what if the doctors would have told him, young man, you can never play down football again? And he's in his mid-20s, and he literally he never thought that, hey, when I put this Buffalo Bills jersey on today, this is going to be the last time I put it on for the rest of the season. Nobody thinks like that. So
No.
you just never know.
Phew, man, I'm sure glad that the Buffalo Bills had somebody quickly to get to him. And man, oh man, I just think if they weren't prepared, then you
Mm-hmm.
could have a totally different outcome, right?
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, they were prepared to save his life that day, and they acted quickly. And I think that makes all the difference between life and death. And yeah, it's great that he's coming back to play football. I'm just happy he's alive. Uh,
Exactly. Like,
you know,
forget football. I'm happy the guy's alive.
I'm
And
happy
like you
he's
said,
alive. I mean, it's wild to think that he's going to be in a Buffalo Bills uniform next season, but I'm just happy he's alive and he can do something with that story, you know?
exactly.
Oof, man, oh man, I tell you. Well, I
Gotta be
love
prepared,
talking.
man. Gotta have people prepared.
Yeah, yeah,
Piss poor. We
absolutely.
have another saying in Omega, which being prepared in preparation is piss poor performance promotes, or piss poor preparation promotes piss poor performance.
Hmm.
So you got to be prepared to get the right. We got to be prepared to get the right performance out of any situation.
Yeah, I talk about that all the time about being prepared, especially, in fraternity and sorority. I think that makes all the difference. And that's why, we talk about risk management and we talk about ways to reduce risk. I mean, if you just go out there and you do whatever and you don't have some preparation beforehand in terms of the structure of what it is that you're trying to do, it could end in disaster. And so,
Absolutely.
I think it's a really, really important message. I think about, for example, Penn State and what happened there with Timothy Piazza. He was
Hmm.
uh, he was trying to join Beta Theta Pi there at Penn State. He ends up falling down the staircase after he had a ton of alcohol as a pledge for Beta Theta Pi. And the brothers of that particular house, they essentially did nothing until the next day. And it wasn't until 10 a.m. the next day did they actually call for an ambulance. But by then, he was already dead. Timothy was no
Hmm.
longer alive. And so, you compare that story to, Damar Hamlin and what happened with the Buffalo Bills, right? I mean, the
Hmm.
Bills, they acted quickly and they saved a life, right? And the students at Beta Theta Pi at Penn State, they did nothing until 10 a.m. the next day. And by then, it was already too late. And I think, just looking at those two things and looking at the two very different outcomes that you had in those two
Hmm.
different situations, I think that tells you everything you need to know about acting quickly and, basically having preparation to know what are we going to do if, God forbid, somebody gets hurt.
Absolutely.
So anyway, so just some of the things that I think about when I look at athletics and fraternity and all of that. Now, we do love good food here at the Fraternity Foodie Podcast, and I know
Hmm.
you're out in Memphis. I'm in Nashville, so we have slightly different foods. We both like barbecue and all of
For
that.
sure.
I need to know what's your favorite restaurant in Memphis, so that way the next time I'm in town, I know where to go.
Well, Memphis, when you come down, you got to have the good barbecue, as you
Yeah,
mentioned. That's the first thing people. Where's the barbecue? Where's the barbecue? You can go, and like any native of their city, they're gonna tell you the best food of their city is their backyard or their kitchen. Like, so, of course, in Memphis, the best barbecue is my dad's grill. My uncle's backyard, because they just been barbecuing. But for commercial wise, I would gotta say you gotta have Cozy Corner downtown is pretty good. I
yeah.
like the Cozy Corner. I like the Interstate Barbecue. Those are probably two of my top favorite barbecue spots here in Memphis. But each barbecue spot has different, like, you're looking for ribs, you go here. You're looking for smoked sausage, you go here. You're looking for not, every barbecue spot has their own expertise. So it all depends on what you're looking for. You're looking for barbecue chicken, but if you just want some good barbecue, I would say just all around. I would definitely say Cozy Corner.
Cozy corner it is. All right. I'm going to test it out the next time I'm in Memphis. I'm going to look
For
you up and
sure.
we're going to meet over there too for some barbecue. All right.
Down the street. Come on.
All right. Because I don't get the invites to your family barbecue. You know what I mean? Unless you're
Oh
inviting
no,
me, I
this
might come out.
yeah, this is the South, man. You know, we have the good old Southern hospitality. Come on, who is it? Fletcher's friend. Come on, grab your plate, wash your hands.
All right. That's a deal. All right. So if our listeners, if they want to book you to speak on their college campus because your story is just so inspirational, where can they go in order to connect with you?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can check me out at FletcherCleaves.com. That's FletcherCleav as in Victor, ES.com. Or find me on social media, Rolling on Faith on Instagram, and the Wheelchair Nomad on Facebook, Rolling on Faith on Twitter. And that's Rolling, ROLLINONFAITH. So rolling without the G and rolling on faith. And people think that because I travel so much and I do have a large following and I've been around the country and I've been around the world speaking and telling my testimony that I'm not approachable or like, oh, he won't respond. But I respond to every single message I get.
I love
So,
it.
yeah,
I
so
love it.
please reach out to your story. I love to hear if you listen to my story, how I can help you achieve your goals or how my story can inspire someone else.
Awesome. Thank you so much for spending time here. It's Rolling on Faith on social media, or go to FletcherCleaves.com and get in touch with him, get him to your campus so that way he can share his inspirational story. Because I tell you what, boy, oh boy, I can't wait to see Fletcher on stages all over the country working with fraternity and sorority communities. And we're going to see what we can do to make that happen. So thank you so
Absolutely.
much, Fletcher. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Have a
All
good one.
right. All right. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this talk with Fletcher, make sure that you like it on social media. Make sure that you share it so that way other college students can hear this message. And we look forward to seeing you on another episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.